Back in the day, wrestling was real. The internet, which would open the door like never before, was the equivalent of voodoo, and what happened in that 20 by 20 ring was serious business. At this time, Kayfabe was at the height of its powers, a device put in place to keep everything as legit as possible. Even away from the crowds, you were expected to keep up appearances, right down to heels being heels in the real world. If an old lady asked you for help up the stairs, it was your responsibility to hail her down those stairs instead. Actually, that may be too far. While not as strong today, Kayfabe is still an important tool when trying to get an audience to suspend their disbelief. And we all go nuts when the fourth wall is broken down, even if it's just a bit. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 infamous moments when wrestlers broke kayfabe. Number 10. The Undertaker sheds a tear. If there's any character more protected in pro wrestling than The Undertaker, I'm not aware of it. Outside of WWE programming, you barely ever see the dead man. Even videos of him deadlifting that creep out from time to time are met with shock and awe. He's not on social media, he rarely does interviews, he doesn't sit with the rest of the locker room during the Hall of Fame, he has an assistant that buys him groceries, maybe, probably, I don't know. But during the night after WrestleMania 24 and Ric Flair's wonderful retirement ceremony, even Taker couldn't hold his emotions in. Coming to show his respect for the Nature Boy after the cameras went off air, the Phenom welled up as the two embraced. Obviously Flair was crying too. He always cries, because it was yet again the greatest night of his life. Still though, it's not often you see The Undertaker smile, let alone shed a tear. Number 9. JBL beats up the Blue Meanie. Pro wrestling is all about trust. You'll often hear wrestlers saying they put their bodies in someone else's hands when they enter the ring, and it's true. Anyone can decide to take a cheap shot, and there's not much you can do about it. This is exactly what happened at WWE's ECW-inspired One Night Stand pay-per-view in 2005, when JBL thought it'd be a great idea to beat up the Blue Meanie for real. As the two companies squared off in a brawl, Bradshaw laid into the Meanie, leaving his face black and blue, something that was apparent as soon as the ruckus calmed down. What's worse, no one actually knows why it happened. The Blue Meanie has said in the past he thought JBL just didn't like him, given he was from ECW and not your typical blue-collar athletic type. That's still no reason to beat the bajingas out of someone. Number 8. Mean Gene. Mean Gene Okerlund is a hero. Responsible for conducting some of the best interviews in pro wrestling history, he was the consummate professional, unless a sign fell off the wall. Preparing to stick a microphone under the noses of ravishing Rick Rude and Bobby the Brain Heenan at SummerSlam 1989, the pay-per-view logo hanging in the background fell from the wall, causing Okerlund to just exclaim, it. His tirade carried on too, as he insulted whoever put the sign up in the first place. This wasn't even the real problem though, given it was never meant to air. The interview had been filmed earlier in the day and someone in the production truck rolled the wrong footage. Whoops. Number 7. The Heart Battery Kid. Don't throw batteries at people. I shouldn't need to tell you that, but just in case you were dragged up or no one has actually sat you down, looked you right in the eye and explained what a battery is for, they are not for hurling at people's faces. So, it's no surprise that Shawn Michaels had something of a hissy fit when some moron did decide to throw a battery at him at an event before WrestleMania 14. Smacking him straight in the head, HBK was so outraged he cut his promo short, jumped out the ring and walked backstage, where he then got into an argument with Vince McMahon. Vince would later claim Shawn wasn't in a good place at the time, but regardless where you are, you're gonna be pretty mad if a device intended for powering things whacks you between the eyes. Number 6. Booker T is coming for Hulk Hogan. Booker T once called Hulk Hogan the N-word during an interview before a match. What's more, Booker T realised what he had done instantly, holding his face in his hands with utter regret. It's now a wrestling legend, and we strongly suggest you go find it on YouTube. Number 5. The Brain Freaks Out. If you've just had neck surgery, you probably don't want a bunch of muscular dudes using you as a human shield. Unless you're just weird, or a sucker for punishment. I'm pretty sure it's just a big fat no for all of us, however. Given that Bobby the Brain Heenan just had said operation, he was understandably a little nervous, even if he was just sat at ringside. This escalated to almost comical levels during a match between Brian Pillman and Eddie Guerrero. With Pillman knocked to the floor, he decided to use Heenan as a shield to protect himself from Guerrero's incoming attack. This sent the Brain into straight up panic mode as he yelled, "What the f*** are you doing?" in Pillman's direction that was audibly caught on camera. After composing himself, Bobby did eventually rejoin the commentary team, and also apologised to all involved backstage. Number 4. McMahon forced into a corner. Given that Vince McMahon loves the entertainment side of pro wrestling, it's amazing he's only killed himself off once on TV. In true soap opera style, it would come as no surprise if the chairman of the board was blown to smithereens constantly, only to appear back on Monday Night Raw with some kerfangled explanation of how he managed to survive. Probably something to do with his grapefruits. In 2007, however, the boss decided to go go all the way and ended Vince McMahon Appreciation Night with his limo exploding, and seemingly leaving him deader than Fandango's hopes to have a meaningful role in the company. While WWE began to run storylines of a federal investigation taking place to further the angle and attempt to make it seem real, a true tragedy took place at the same time when one of their employees was involved in a very real double murder-suicide. McMahon had no choice but to pull back the curtain as the Benoit investigation took place. Number 3. Bash at the Beach 2000. Don't be a jabroni mark and work yourself into a shoot, even when a shoot is a work, or a work is a shoot. What is even going on? What's happening? What is this nonsense? This is how most pro wrestling fans felt when WCW decided to come up with an angle so stupid and bizarre, you would have thought they were actively trying to get people to turn off their television sets. With Jeff Jarrett about to square off against Hulk Hogan for the World Championship at Bash at the Beach 2000, Jarrett threw himself to the floor and told the Hulkster to pin him. Confused, Hogan did just that with his foot, getting the 1-2-3 and winning the match. Just to drive that nail right into the coffin, Hulk then grabbed a mic to proclaim, "That's why this company is in the damn shape it's in, because of bullshit like this." To confuse the situation even more, this was followed by head writer Vince Russo coming out, declaring what we had just seen void, and setting up a match between Jarrett and Booker T. Forget how dumb all that sounds, because the real nonsense comes when you learn that to this day, Hogan and Russo have very different opinions of what occurred that night. One says it was all planned, the other says it was a double cross. What we know for sure is that it's all stupid. Number 2. The Curtain Call. The Curtain Call is one of the most infamous moments of kayfabe breaking in history. Going down when such things were still quite sensitive, it probably caused a few old-timers to collapse as the idea of protecting the business was set on fire, thrown out the window, then retrieved before being hurled outside again, sparking intense debate behind the scenes. It all started when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall accepted big money deals to leave the then WWF and join WCW. Aside from being a loss to the company, it was also the final days of The Clique, a backstage group that also contained Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So, given that they were all about to go their separate ways, Triple H and Hall decided to join HBK and Nash in the ring after their match to share one big hug, despite the fact that they weren't meant to be friends, and were feuding with each other, and were in Madison Square Garden. It's said that Vince McMahon had agreed to some moment of respect, but what went down was far more than he anticipated. With Michaels being the champ and Hall and Nash on their way out, the entire fallout hit Triple H like a ton of bricks. Number 1. The Montreal Screwjob. Is there a more talked about situation in all of pro wrestling than what happened at the Survivor Series 1997? Still debated and touched on today, it will live in infamy forever. Hell, if aliens ever land on this planet, I would bet someone eventually musters up the courage to ask, so, who do you think was to blame for the Montreal Screwjob? Kicking into gear when Bret Hart opted to join WCW, the question remained as to how the Hitman would drop his WWF title. Being that the Survivor Series was taking place on his home turf of Canada, coupled with his personal animosities towards that evening's opponent Shawn Michaels, Bret allegedly struck a deal with McMahon to drop the championship on Raw the next night instead. But what if Hart went against his word? And what if he showed up on the rival program with the title like Ric Flair had done with the WCW belt during his WWF tenure? What if? What if? What if? One would assume all this was too much for Vince to gamble on, ordering Earl Hebner to stop the match when HBK applied the sharpshooter to Bret, even though that wasn't the finish of the match. Shawn was the champ, Hebner got out of Dodge in a pre-prepared car, and Vince got punched in the face by Hart for screwing him over. Despite knowing nearly every move that happens behind the scenes, pro wrestling can still surprise us with the odd moment of reality in front of the cameras. Let us know of any more in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can even get me on Twitter at SimonMiller316. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and I'll chat to you again soon.